Why am I running? I'm a guy who grew up in a small town in South Georgia, a little town called Adrian. And so I've got small town values. I saw my dad with a servant's heart work 7 days a week. He was the only physician in the area. So I saw from a very early time in my life what it means when someone gives back to the community and what that means to the community. So when the opportunity to get to serve in the Senate came up, it was kind of something that was natural for me. And I've been very grateful to have some good opportunities to get to serve and then be in a leadership position and want to move into the Lieutenant Governor's position. I've got a few things that I think are most important, but I know what's on voters' minds is what is my vision and what is their vision for the state of Georgia for the next 4 to 8 years. We've had really good leadership under Governor Kemp, and I think the other conservative leadership that we've had in the House and the Senate. For me, I want to make sure that we continue that path. I want to make sure that we keep Georgia growing. You know, if we've got a good economy and folks have jobs, then a lot of social ills really go by the wayside. You know, I want to make sure that we keep Georgia learning. That's something critically important. We're proud of what we've done with the last several years of getting teacher pay up to where it's now the highest in the Southeast. But we've got to do things like make sure that our schools are safe so that when the children and the parents and the teachers go to work there, they know they're going to a safe work environment. And I also want to make sure that we keep Georgia safe. We've got to make sure that folks understand and appreciate that safety is sort of something we often take for granted, but we need to back those that back us, back the blue, and take care of our first responders, and making sure that we have a world out there when you're Georgians and you leave your home, you feel good about being safe.
Why are you deciding to announce now?
You know, we're 11 months away, and quite frankly, there's a lot of places, a lot of offices that are going to be open, from the U.S. Senate seat to governor to lieutenant governor, attorney general, and maybe others. So Georgia's a big state, and so I've got a lot of ground to cover to introduce myself to folks that I don't know and talk about the record that we've built, because I do think it comes down to making sure we get our message out of what our vision is for the state of Georgia for the next 4 to 8 years.
You've been very close with Governor Brian Kemp, even authoring his signature piece of legislation that did pass this previous session. Are you confident that you will have the backing of Governor Kemp in this run?
You know, you'd have to ask Governor Kemp about that. We do see things very similarly. I admire his leadership style. I admire what he has done. What I really have to have is the backing of the Georgia voters, and that's really what I seek through the campaign process. But I am honored to have been asked by him to carry the lawsuit abuse reform legislation that we did with Senate Bill 68 and 69 this year. It's going to bring great things to Georgia insurance folks that are paying insurance premiums, making sure we've got a good business environment here for job creators, and also making sure that folks that do need to go to the courthouse, they do so knowing they're going to be treated fairly no matter what side of the room that they sit on when they go there. So was honored to do that. And tort reform is something, or lawsuit abuse reform is something I've worked on for several years. Governor Kemp getting behind it for the last 2 years made a big difference in being enabling us to actually pass it this year.
Can I ask you this? In your run, let's say you get that seat, you get that new job as Lieutenant Governor. You're going to be inheriting a state of people, and things might change from now until then. But say the election was today, you won that race right now. There's a lot of people who are frustrated on both sides of the aisle with what's happening at the national level. As we know, the state, there's a certain set of laws, there's a certain group of people that affect us here as a state, but the national level can weigh impact on that. What is your message to people who look at everything that's going on nationally and they're just like, we're frustrated, nothing's happening? What can you do about that as Lieutenant Governor?
You know, you're right. There is an interconnectedness between what goes on at the state and, of course, what comes out of Washington, just like there is what goes on at the local level for the folks that serve us as county commission folks and city council people. So there is that connectedness that's there. I would say, look at my track record of having now served for 3 years as the President Pro Tem of the Georgia Senate, which is the only Senate leadership position that is voted on by the entire Senate chamber. I've stood for election twice, and I was voted unanimously to serve as the President Pro Tem by every Republican and every Democrat in the chamber. So I think that hopefully helps explain who I am from a leadership style. It's inclusive. I listen first, talk later, and try to be effective and address issues, because as I've talked about, those issues that I want to make sure that we keep Georgia growing, keep Georgia safe and keep Georgia learning, I want and need the help of the other colleagues that are down at the legislature, regardless of whether they have an R or a D in front of their name.
And you're going to be going for the seat currently held by Mr. Lieutenant Governor Bert Jones.
Yes.
What would you take away from what he's done? What would you build upon on that if you were to get this job?
You know, I think Lieutenant Governor Jones has done a good job. I think he's had a very active agenda, and I think it shows, quite frankly, as we began 3 years ago, we had a desire to make sure that on issues that were important to Georgians, kitchen table issues and other issues, that we led as a Senate chamber. And I think that he has done that effectively as the Lieutenant Governor, and he's done a good job working with the leadership team in the Senate, of which I am one of the four. I'm the pro tem and then the majority leader in 2 other offices. And the way the Senate structure, as you know, it's a very much to be effective, you need a collaborative mindset and a collaborative effort. I think he's done a good job. I think I've also done a good job leading our leadership team in working with him to get effective legislation passed. And then, of course, we've got to get the House to agree. And I think having folks in the House, from the Speaker and other chairmen and chairladies in the House, see me as someone who's trusted, who's out there trying to get results, not rhetoric, I think makes a difference. And I think that collaboration, when folks can work together, that's when people see government working for them, perhaps not some of the frustration that they have when they look at Washington.
I think they want people to work together and move forward and actually get something done. Can I ask you about this? A couple of issues that have created a little bit of controversy depending on what you think about it, but also a call for bipartisan agreement. There is an issue happening in Dalton right now with a young woman who's 19 who was deported after she was detained by ICE after she was pulled over for an accidental traffic stop. Republican Casey Carpenter, who put together a petition on change.org calling for a bipartisan immigration reform to make sure that we are deporting the quote-unquote bad guys, the criminals, and not moms, parents, students. Is that something that you would support?
You know, I haven't seen any proposed legislation, and as they say, you have to see the details. I do know Representative Carpenter, and I think he's a good legislator and has a good heart. I would say what you see embedded in that issue and him calling for something to be done is not only a Georgia but a national frustration over the immigration policy, or the lack of an immigration policy that we've had for the last 4 years under Biden, where the borders were completely open. It's been absolutely disastrous for not just Georgia, but for the country. And so that has created these circumstances where we now have to deal with people that are in the country that should have never been let in. And how do we deal with it? I would tell you the second part of my answer is, as an attorney, due process and making sure that the rules are followed whenever you implement laws, or laws are going to affect how people are treated. I think the process is very important. And I think that's probably what Representative Carpenter, I've not talked to him about this and his idea.
Would you be open to it?
Absolutely, I'd be open, especially if we're talking about making sure we preserve the appropriate due process and that folks are treated fairly. But it's not just being fair, we also have to follow the laws that are on the books when it comes to the process. But also bear in mind, there needs to be an efficient way to deal with the problem of the lack of an immigration policy for the last 4 years, where we now have folks in our midst that want to do us harm that should not be in this country. How do we deal with that most efficiently and effectively so that we wind up being, back to one of my 3 points, Georgians want to be safe. I want to make sure we keep them safe.
And I know that our time is limited. I want to get to this topic as well, if I could. Since the passage of the heartbeat bill, both Republicans and Democrats have agreed that there is a gray area that needs some clarification when it comes to what doctors can do, when it comes to what people can do to make sure that they are legally protected and following the law. There's a case right now with a young woman in Emory University who has been declared brain dead. She's being kept alive in hopes to give birth to the baby. And there is a proposal, or there's been a request for the Attorney General to specify what they can and cannot do. My question to you is, if you inherited something like this, is this something that you would consider maybe creating a panel to figure out this gray area to answer those questions that people do have?
You know, not unlike most laws that we pass, we do so and often have to come back and revisit them. I'm not as familiar, I think, with the details of the Emory situation as I think you are. All I know is a little bit that I've read, excuse me, in the papers. But if the question is, do we need to go back and look at how can we clarify legislation to make sure that the intent is being served? Absolutely. That is always, I think, part of the duties that good and effective legislators do, and not just at the legislative level, but from the governor to the lieutenant governor and on down.
My last question for you, if that's okay. Why should people put that check towards your name when it comes to first the primary, and then if you get through the primary, the general?
Thank you for the question. I would say if folks are looking for someone who's effective, who's trusted, who is out there trying to get something done and bring solutions for Georgians, I'm a candidate they ought to look at. And it's not just campaign talk. It's an effective history of passing good legislation, not shying away from things that are difficult, whether it's lawsuit abuse reform that we addressed this year, whether it is making sure that we continue to try to keep Georgia running lean and returning taxpayer money back to folks, whether it's recognizing that we had a problem up until last year with Georgia being one of the few states that did not have an anti-Semitism bill on the books. I fought hard for that, and the bill that's on the books is the House bill that came over that my office rewrote, and I carried it through the Senate. The House passed it, and the governor signed it the next day. So I think it's recognizing problems and making sure that folks are taken care of. If you're looking for trusted leadership with an effective track record, especially on the issues of keeping Georgia growing, keeping Georgia safe, and keeping Georgia learning, I'm your candidate.
Right. Mr. Kennedy, thank you so much for coming down. We truly appreciate it.
Great, thank you.
And you're welcome back anytime.
Okay, would love to come back. Thanks.